Twain. Chapter 1. The Birth of the Prince and the Pauper. Nearly 500 years ago in London, 2 baby boys were born on the same day. One family wanted their baby very much. This baby wore beautiful, expensive clothes. His family and lots of servants took care of him. He was Edward Tudor, the future King of England. Everybody in England wanted this baby. When he arrived, the country was very happy. There was a holiday, and everybody had big parties. People kissed each other and danced in the streets. The other baby boy's family were very poor, and they did not want another baby. This baby was called Tom Canty. Nobody danced for him. He was a pauper, and he wore rags. For 9 years, Tom Canty lived in a small house near London Bridge. About 100,000 people lived in the old city of London then, perhaps more.
Chapter 2. Tom Canty's Poor London.
Some parts of London were very rich, but London Bridge was very poor. The houses were made of wood, and they had small, dark windows. The streets were narrow and dirty, and there were too many people. There was always a horrible smell, because people threw rubbish on the streets. Tom lived in a house in Offal Court. Many poor families lived in that house, and it was often a noisy and dangerous place to live. Every night, people shouted and argued. There were always lots of fights. Tom's family lived in one room on the 3rd floor of the house. He lived with his mother, father, sisters, and grandmother. They all dressed in rags. Tom's mother and father slept in a bed, and the others slept on the dirty floor. Tom had twin sisters, Nan and Bet. They were both 15 years old. His mother and his sisters were not clever people, but they were kind and friendly. Tom loved them, but he was frightened of his father and his grandmother. They often hit Tom, his sisters, and his mother. Tom's father was called John Canty. He did not work. He stole money and told Tom and his sisters to steal too. Tom said he did not want to be a thief, but his father hit him. The family was very poor and hungry. Tom and his sisters begged for money in the streets. Some people gave them money. Other people laughed and shouted at them. But little Tom Canty was happy. He thought that everybody was poor and hungry, like his family. He sometimes played with his friends. They went swimming in the river, or they played in the mud.
Chapter 3. Tom's Dream of a Prince.
A man called Father Andrew lived in Offal Court. Father Andrew was a good man. He taught Tom to read and write. Tom loved listening to Father Andrew's stories about princes and palaces. He read Father Andrew's books about kings and queens. When he read, he dreamt of a different life. Tom's big dream was to see a real prince. Tom sometimes pretended he was a prince. He walked and talked like a prince. He had a royal court, and people asked him for help. These people thought Tom was a very clever boy, like a real prince. Tom wanted to see a prince very much. He thought about it all the time. One night, Tom dreamt about being a prince. He lived in a beautiful palace, and he was loved by many people. When he woke up, he knew it was a dream. He looked at the small, dirty, cold room, and he cried.
Chapter 4. Tom reaches the palace.
The morning after his dream, Tom felt sad and hungry. He left his home and he walked and walked. Tom thought about princes and palaces. After a long time, he arrived at the royal palace in Westminster. It was very far from Offal Court. Tom was amazed. He thought the palace was beautiful. It was a large building, with lots of tall towers and big windows. Outside the palace gates, people from all over the country waited. Everybody wanted to see the royal family. Tom saw fine carriages with white horses go into the palace. Rich, important people were sitting in the carriages. They did not look at the poor, dirty people outside. 2 strong guards stood at the gates to stop ordinary people from entering. Tom waited in his rags and looked through the gates. He was hoping to see the prince. He saw some servants walk into the palace. Then a young boy came out of the palace. He wore expensive clothes and a hat with purple feathers. He was carrying a sword. The servants all bowed. Tom knew the boy was the prince and was very happy. He heard the people shout, "Long live the prince!" Tom was lucky. This was a real prince, Prince Edward. Tom wanted to see the prince better. He ran to the palace gates, but a guard pulled him away. "Go away, beggar boy!" shouted the guard. Prince Edward heard the guard and felt sad for Tom. "Don't do that!" shouted the angry prince to the guard. "He's only a boy. Let him in." The gates opened, and the pauper Tom Canty walked slowly into the royal palace. "You look tired and hungry," said the prince. "You must eat." The prince's servants were surprised and worried. Poor people did not eat in the palace. "Bring this boy food and then leave us alone," the prince said to his servants. Soon, Tom was sitting in a beautiful dining room, eating beef and chicken with potatoes. At home, Tom was always hungry. He never dreamt he would eat nice food like this. Tom ate, and the prince watched him. The prince was very interested in Tom.
Chapter 5. The Prince Questions Tom.
For the first time in his life, he asked a pauper some questions. "What's your name?" he said. "Tom Canty," said Tom quietly. "Where do you live?" asked the prince. "In Offal Court, near London Bridge," replied Tom. Tom was surprised that the prince was interested, but he was very happy to answer the prince's questions. "Have you got a mother and father?" continued the prince. "Oh, yes. I've also got 2 sisters and a grandmother, but I don't like my grandmother." "Why don't you like your grandmother?" asked the prince. "Because she's a bad woman. She hits me," answered Tom. "That's terrible," said the prince. Tom saw that he was very angry. "I will send her to prison in the Tower of London," he shouted. "But only important people go to prison in the Tower of London," replied Tom. "Yes, that's true," said the prince. "Is your father kind?" "No, he hits me too," replied Tom. "I understand," said the prince. "My father is sometimes angry. Does your mother hit you?" "No, my mother and my sisters are very kind," said Tom. "I have got sisters too," said the prince. "They are called Lady Elizabeth and Lady Mary. I have also got a cousin called Lady Jane Grey. Lady Elizabeth and Lady Jane are very nice, but Lady Mary is not. She gets very angry with her servants. Do your sisters get angry with their servants?" "They haven't got any servants," replied Tom. "Then who helps them to get dressed?" asked the prince. "We all get dressed ourselves, and we don't have many clothes," said Tom. The prince did not understand. How could people get dressed themselves? A servant always helped him. "You can have one of my servants," he said. "I will also give you and your sisters lots of new clothes. Do not thank me. It is nothing." "That is very kind of you, sir," said Tom. "You speak very well. Where do you go to school?" the prince went on. "I don't go to school," Tom said. "A good man called Father Andrew taught me to read and write." The prince smiled. "I have got a teacher as well," he said. "Tell me about your home. Are you happy there?" Tom thought about Offal Court. "Yes," he said. "Sometimes there are puppet shows and plays in the street. I play with my friends, and sometimes we hit each other with wooden swords for fun." "That sounds wonderful," the prince said. "In summer," continued Tom, "we go swimming in the river. We also dance and we play in the mud." "Excellent," replied the prince happily. "I'd really like to wear your clothes, see a puppet show, play with friends, and swim in the river. Sometimes I get very bored here." "Well," said Tom, "I'd really like to dress like a prince." "Really?" said the prince.
Chapter 6. The boys change clothes.
"Well, we'll swap clothes. I'll wear your clothes and you can wear mine." A few minutes later, Tom was wearing the prince's expensive clothes and the hat with purple feathers. The prince was wearing Tom's dirty old rags. "Look in the mirror," said the prince. Tom looked, and he was very surprised. "We have got the same eyes," continued the prince. "We have got the same hair. We have even got the same face." It was true. The two boys looked exactly the same. They were like twins. But then the prince saw one small difference between them. "You have got a bruise on your hand," he said to Tom. Tom looked at his hand and saw a big black mark on it. "How did you get it?" asked the prince. "That guard hurt me when he pushed me away from the palace gates," Tom said. This made the prince very angry. "I'm going to find that guard and shout at him," said the prince. "Before I go, I must put this thing in a safe place." The prince had a beautiful gold object in his hand. The prince hid the gold object in a suit of armour. Then he quickly ran out of the room. He went to the palace gates. "Who are you?" asked the guard. "I am the prince," he said. The guard did not believe him, because he was wearing rags. "Don't be stupid," the guard shouted, and opened the gate. "You're only a beggar boy." He pushed the prince out of the palace and onto the street. All the people on the street laughed at the prince. "I am Prince Edward, the future King of England," the prince shouted, but everybody laughed. He was alone and outside the palace. Nobody believed he was the prince. The people from the palace gates followed the prince for a long time. They laughed at him and called him names. The prince was angry and shouted at them. At last, he grew tired and quiet. The people got bored and left him alone. The young prince walked on. He was in a part of the city he did not know. He was lost, and his feet hurt.
Chapter 7. Edward is cast out.
He walked on until he saw a place he knew. It was a home for poor children, called Christ's Hospital. His father, the king, gave the hospital lots of money.
"Good," said the prince to himself happily. "The people here will help me."
He went in and saw lots of boys playing games.
"I am Prince Edward," he said to them all. "I want to speak to the schoolmaster here."
The boys were all very surprised.
"You're not the prince," they said. "Look at you. You're only a beggar boy." "Listen to me," shouted the prince. "I am Edward, Prince of Wales. You must all bow down to me."
All the boys laughed at him. They pretended to bow to him, which made the prince angry. He kicked one of the boys.
"At first we thought you were funny," they shouted. "But now we're angry with you."
The prince was frightened. The boys took him outside and they hit him many times. Their dogs hurt him too. Then the boys threw him into a pond and left. Now the prince was wet, cold, dirty and tired. His whole body hurt. He was upset and he missed the palace. He decided he would give the Christ's Hospital boys lots of books when he was king. He thought this would help them to be more kind. It was getting dark, and it started to rain. Edward walked through lots of little streets. He did not know where he was.
Chapter 8. John Canty finds Edward.
Suddenly, there was a big man. He was very angry.
"What are you doing out at this time of night?" shouted the man. "I hope you've been a good beggar today and got some money for me, son." "Mr. Canty!" shouted the prince. "Are you really Mr. Canty? You're the poor boy's father. You must go to the palace and get Tom." "The poor boy's father?" asked John Canty. He was very surprised. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm your father, Tom." "Mr. Canty, I'm so tired and I want to go home now. Take me to my father, the king. He will give you lots of money and make you rich," begged the prince. John Canty looked at the prince and shook his head. "Tom Canty, you're mad," he said. "But you must believe me," cried the prince. "I am not Tom Canty. I'm Prince Edward." "Mad, completely mad," continued John Canty. He picked up the prince and started walking home. In the palace, Tom looked into the mirror for a long time. He saw himself wearing beautiful clothes. He looked very different to the normal Tom Canty. and he felt pleased. Tom walked around the room and looked at all the expensive things. He played with the prince's sword and sat in the lovely chairs. As he played, he thought about his family and friends at Offal Court.
Chapter 9. Tom is trapped in the palace.
What would they think if they could see him now? When he went home, he would tell them some good stories. Suddenly, Tom began to worry. The prince left the room about 30 minutes ago. Where was the prince? A guard might find Tom there and send him to prison, or worse. Tom began to feel very lonely and frightened. Then there was a knock at the door, which made Tom jump. The door opened, and the prince's cousin, Lady Jane, came into the room. She looked at Tom. "You don't look good," said Lady Jane. "Are you okay, my prince?" "Oh, no, I'm not the prince," cried Tom on his knees. "I'm a pauper called Tom Canty." Young Jane did not understand, and she was very worried. "Why are you on your knees? You're the prince," she cried, and ran out of the room. Tom lay on the floor. He was so worried that he could not move. He thought the guards were coming to take him to prison. Everybody found out about Lady Jane's visit to the prince very quickly. They all thought the prince must be mad, but they could not talk about it. They would be sent to prison if they did. Tom was taken to Henry VIII. He was very frightened and felt weak. He could not walk very well, and other people helped him. He entered the room and saw King Henry. The king was lying down. Tom could see the king was fat, old, and very ill.
"How are you, my prince?"
asked the king. "Please do not send me to prison," cried Tom. The king did not understand why Tom said this, and felt sad. He was worried about his son.
"Oh no, I hoped that it was not true, but you are mad. Come here, my son. Do you know me?"
"You're the king. I'm a pauper. Please don't hurt me," replied Tom.
"Why would I hurt you? You aren't a pauper. You're my only son, the prince," said the king. "You are mad. I will ask you some questions to find out if you are still clever."
He asked Tom a question in Latin. Everybody was quiet. Tom knew some Latin because of Father Andrew's lessons. He answered the king correctly, and everybody smiled. Then the king asked him a question in French. "I'm sorry," said Tom. "I don't know this language." Everybody was very sad and worried again. The king tried another question.
"Where is the Great Seal of England?" he asked.
The Great Seal was a very important, expensive object. Prince Edward took care of it for the king.
"The Great what?"
replied Tom. He did not know what the king was talking about.
"I'm sorry,"
said Tom.
"I don't know where it is."
The king was very sad.
"My son,"
said the king to Tom,
"you will hide your madness from everybody. It is very important that you do not tell people you are a pauper. You will go to the great banquet tomorrow evening. I'm sure you will be okay soon."
"Yes, my king,"
Tom agreed. He would try to act like a prince from now on.
"My son has worked too hard, and he is mad," shouted the king. "He will rest and play games until he is better. Anyone who makes him work will go to prison. He will be King of England. Leave me now. I must rest."
Tom left the king's room feeling terrible. He could not leave the palace, and he did not know if he would see his family again. He wanted to go home to Offal Court. He hated being a prince. He sat on his bed and thought about the great banquet. He was so worried he could not sleep. John Canty took the prince to Offal Court. The prince shouted and tried to run away.
Chapter 10. Edward in Offal Court.
Lots of people laughed at them, but Father Andrew told John Canty to stop. John Canty hit Father Andrew on the head with a stick. Then he pulled the prince into the Canty's room.
"Where am I?"
asked the prince.
"At home, of course,"
replied Nan and Bet.
"Home? This is not my home,"
he cried out.
"I live in the palace."
The sisters and Mrs. Canty were very worried, and they ran to him.
"What are you talking about?"
asked Mrs. Canty.
"Tom, are you okay?" "I am not Tom,"
said the prince.
"I am Edward, Prince of Wales."
"The Prince of Wales! Ha! My son thinks he's the Prince of Wales!" shouted John Canty. "He's mad!"
"My poor boy, you've read too much about princes,"
said Mrs. Canty.
"You aren't a prince. I am your mother." "I do not know you,"
said Edward angrily. Mrs. Canty thought her son was mad, and she started to cry.
"How much money did you get today, Tom?" asked John Canty.
"I haven't got any money for you. I do not beg. I am a prince,"
replied Edward. This made John Canty very angry, and he hit the prince again and again. Then Grandmother Canty hit him. Mrs. Canty tried to stop them, but she could not. John Canty turned out the light and went to sleep. Nan and Bet went over to the prince. They put straw on him to make him warm. Then Mrs. Canty went over to him and gave him some food. The prince thanked them. His body hurt, but at last he went to sleep. Mrs. Canty could not sleep. She did not know if this boy was Tom Canty. She wanted to find out. When Tom Canty was surprised by something, he always put his hand in front of his face with his palm out. Mrs. Canty went over to the prince and woke him up. The prince was very surprised, but he did not move his hand in that special way. This boy might not be her son. At that moment, there was a loud knock on the door. A man shouted,
"John Canty, you killed Father Andrew. You must run, or the police will send you to prison." "Quick," said John Canty. "We have to leave. Now."
John Canty picked up a bag and put some bread in it.
"Let's go,"
he said. He pushed the sisters and the prince out of the door.
"Run, now," he shouted. "We will meet on London Bridge."
Outside, the streets were very busy. People were having parties because it was the day of the Prince of Wales's great banquet. There was singing, dancing, and shouting. John Canty held the prince's hand. Then John Canty argued with another man, and the prince ran away. John Canty could not find him. The prince was free, but he was very angry. He knew now that the pauper Tom Canty was in the palace. He was pretending to be the Prince of Wales. Edward decided to go to the great banquet and tell everybody the truth.
Chapter 11. Tom learns palace rules.
At 1 o'clock, there was a knock on Tom's door in the palace. A servant came into the room.
"Are you ready for lunch, sir?"
the servant asked. Yes, said Tom. But the servant looked at him carefully.
"But you aren't wearing your lunch clothes, sir," he said. "You usually wear different clothes for lunch."
Of course, said Tom. Tell me, what do I usually wear for lunch? The servant went to the wardrobe room and chose some very fine clothes. Tom liked them, and he started to get dressed.
Sir,
said the servant,
I usually help you to get dressed."
"Okay," said Tom. He did nothing, and the servant helped him. He put on a beautiful white shirt and a small red jacket. It took a very long time, but Tom was happy with these clothes. Then Tom followed the servant through the palace. They went to a very big room with lots of tables. Tom sat alone at one of them, and 10 servants stood behind him. The servants put lots of plates of food on the table, and then they waited. It was very quiet. Tom did not understand what was happening. He was hungry, and he wanted to eat.
"Is anybody going to eat?" he asked. "But only you eat, sir," said one servant. "Oh, of course," said Tom. He picked up a cup, but a servant stopped him. "Sir," said a servant, "the servant of the cup will help you. He puts water in your cup." "Oh, yes," said Tom. The servant of the cup put water in Tom's cup. There was a plate with lots of green leaves on it. "What is this?" Tom asked. "It is salad, sir," said a servant. "What is salad?" asked Tom. Green leaves, sir," replied the servant. Tom did not think it looked very nice. He decided not to eat it, and he took some meat. Another servant stopped him. The servant had to cut the meat into little pieces for Tom. Then Tom ate it with his fingers. The servants watched Tom. They were sad because they thought the prince was ill. The prince usually loved salad, and he never ate with his fingers. There were some nuts on a plate. Tom wanted to eat the nuts, but he did not want the servants to watch him. He put some nuts in his pocket.
Chapter 12. The Great Banquet.
"I will eat them later," he thought.
Then Tom had an itch on his nose.
"I'm sure a prince doesn't scratch his own nose," he thought.
He tried not to think about it, but the itch got worse and worse. He did not know what to do.
"My nose itches," he said. "What must I do?"
The servants looked at each other. They did not know what to do. There was no servant for scratching royal itches.
"Please," continued Tom, "I don't like having an itch on my nose."
The servants did not move. They were all worried and looked at each other. After a few minutes, Tom could not wait.
"I'm sorry,"
he said, and he scratched his nose himself. When Tom finished eating, the servants brought a bowl of water. It was for Tom to wash his fingers in. Tom did not know the reason for the bowl of water. He picked the bowl up and he started to drink from it. The servants were very surprised.
"This doesn't taste very nice," he said. "It needs more salt."
The servants looked at each other again. Then Tom stood up, but another servant stopped him.
"The Lord Protector always takes you back to your room,"
said the servant.
"Oh, yes,"
said Tom, but really he did not understand.
"Call the Lord Protector,"
said the servant to another servant.
"Call the Lord Protector,"
the other servant shouted to another servant. After some time, the Lord Protector came into the room. He was the prince's uncle, and he was a very important man. As they walked, the Lord Protector talked to Tom. "Sir," he said, "I know you are ill at the moment. You must be worried about the great banquet tonight."
"Yes, that is true,"
said Tom.
"I am very worried."
"I will help you. I will tell you what a prince must do. When you eat, let the servants do everything," continued the Lord Protector. "Servants will put water in your cup, and they will cut your food into small pieces. If you want nuts later, just ask a servant to bring you some. A prince doesn't put nuts in his pocket."
"No, of course not,"
replied Tom. "And the bowl of water at the end of the meal," said the Lord Protector.
"Yes, that didn't taste very nice,"
said Tom. "That is to wash your fingers in. It isn't a drink, sir," the Lord Protector went on.
"Oh, yes, I remember now,"
said Tom. "And one other thing," continued the Lord Protector. "A prince does not say please or thank you."
"Why not?"
asked Tom.
"Everybody should always say please and thank you."
"Ordinary people should always say please and thank you," replied the Lord Protector. "But you are a prince." They arrived at the prince's room.
Chapter 12. The Great Banquet.
"I will leave you now, sir," said the Lord Protector. "Please rest this afternoon. Then you will be ready for the great banquet tonight." Tom lay on the big, soft bed, but he did not sleep. He was too nervous about the great banquet. He walked around the room, and he found lots of books. Tom usually loved reading, but he was too nervous to read. Lots of people were coming to the great banquet. They would watch him, and they would know he was not a prince. A few hours later, a servant knocked on his door.
"The great banquet is soon, sir,"
said the servant. Tom knew what to do. He stood and did nothing. The servant got his clothes, and he helped Tom to get dressed. After some time, Tom was ready to go to the great banquet. He was wearing a long, heavy blue and gold coat. It had hundreds of jewels on it. Tom felt very nervous, but he looked like a real prince. Tom was taken to the great banquet on a boat. It was the biggest and loveliest boat on the river. 50 smaller boats followed Tom's boat. Some of them were very small, and some of them were very big. They were all very colourful and had big royal flags. They looked wonderful. Soldiers played trumpets loudly, and there were lights in the sky. Tom sat on a big, comfortable chair. He watched and listened to everything. It was so beautiful, and it made him very happy. He smiled and smiled. The prince's sisters sat with him. They did not even look out of the window. It was boring for them. They soon arrived at the great banquet. There was more music, and there were more flags. Hundreds of people were waiting at the side of the river. They all wanted to see the prince. The pauper Tom Canty from Offal Court walked off the boat.
"Here is Prince Edward!"
the people shouted. The great banquet was in a very grand hall. It was as big as the palace, and it was beautiful. There were hundreds of tables. Each table had lots of colourful flowers on it. More soldiers played their trumpets when Tom walked in. Everybody was watching Tom very carefully. They wanted to know if he really was mad. Tom sat at a very big table at the front of the room. There was food everywhere. Tom remembered to let a servant put water in his cup and cut his food into small pieces. Servants brought plate after plate after plate. Tom never said please or thank you. He ate lots, and the food was very good. He even tried some salad. Tom got everything right, and everybody stopped worrying. They did not think he was mad. After dinner, there were dancers for the prince to watch. Tom liked the dancing. It made him feel happy, and he laughed a lot. When everybody saw the prince laughing, they laughed too. It was a perfect evening. But then, the big doors opened, and a servant ran in.
"I have got terrible news,"
he said.
"The king is dead."
We now return to the real prince, who has just run away from John Canty. Prince Edward was walking to the great banquet hall. He wanted to tell everybody that he was the real prince. When he arrived outside the great banquet hall, there were a lot of people waiting.
Chapter 13. Edward meets Miles Hendon.
"We want to see the prince!"
the people shouted. Edward pushed his way through all the people.
"I am the prince,"
he said angrily.
"You can see me now. I am here."
The people looked at this boy, and they laughed. He was wearing rags. He was a pauper.
"You're not the prince,"
one man said to him.
"Don't be stupid,"
said a woman.
"Look,"
she said to her friends. This boy thinks he's Prince Edward.
I am Prince Edward. I have no friends, but I am the prince,
he shouted. He wanted to cry. The people stopped laughing at Edward. They were angry with him now.
Be quiet,
they said to him.
Stop saying you're the prince. You're wearing rags.
The people pushed him and pulled him. One person even hit him. Edward tried to run, but there were too many people. He was frightened and worried.
Leave him,
shouted a very tall man suddenly. He was strong and wore soldier's clothes. The clothes looked very old, and his hat was broken.
He's only a boy. Don't hit him. Boy, I don't know if you are a prince, but I will be your friend. My name is Miles Hendon.
Miles pushed the people away. Edward felt okay for a moment.
There's my boy.
It was Tom Canty again. He was very angry when he saw Edward.
There you are,
he said.
Come with me. I will hit you for running away from me.
Miles told Tom Canty,
You will not hit this boy again. He can live with me now. Yes, said the prince. He is not my father. I hate him.
Tom Canty did not listen. He tried to take the prince, but Miles stopped him. Then Miles picked Edward up and quickly carried him away from Tom Canty. Miles ran through the streets. When it was quiet, he put Edward down.
You helped me. When I am king, I will make you a knight, said the prince.
Before Miles could say anything else, a boy came running through the streets.
The king is dead, he shouted. Long live Edward, King of England!
Edward felt very sad because his father was dead. Many people were frightened of King Henry.
Chapter 14. Miles protect the king.
He was a very big, very important man who was often angry. But Edward knew his father was a kind man. He played with him when he was a little boy. Edward started to cry, but then he stopped. He was king now, and a king must not cry. Miles Hendon took Edward to his room. It was a small room near London Bridge. Edward looked around. There was an old bed, a table, 2 chairs and some candles. He did not like the room because it was dirty.
Where are your servants?
Edward asked. I don't have any servants, Miles said, laughing. Edward was not happy. He was tired and hungry. The little king lay on the bed.
Wake me when dinner is ready,
he told Miles. He went to sleep quickly. Miles looked at him. Miles said to himself, "He must be very ill. He thinks he's the king. I will help him and be a brother to him. I won't laugh at him again." After some time, there was a knock at the door. A woman came in. She was Miles's neighbour, and she often cooked his dinner. The woman had a big pot of soup. She put it on the table. "Here, Mr. Hendon," she said. "I thought you would like this soup." "Thank you," said Miles. The woman smiled at Edward, who was waking up, and then went. Edward was very hungry and sat down at the table. Miles gave him a bowl of the soup. Then he sat down next to him. "What are you doing?" asked Edward. "What am I doing?" replied Miles. "I'm sitting down next to you. I'm going to eat some soup. I'm very hungry too." "You must not sit down in front of the king," said Edward. Miles was very surprised. He nearly laughed. But then he remembered that his new friend was mad. "I must be kind to him," thought Miles. "Oh, yes, of course," said Miles. "I'm sorry, sir." Then Miles stood up, and Edward ate the soup. The soup was good, and Edward soon felt better. "Miles is a good man," thought Edward. "I must help him when I'm king. Miles, I would like to thank you," said Edward. "What would you like? I'll give you anything I can." Miles thought for a moment. He was very tired. "I would like to sit down in front of the king." "Very well," Edward said. "You may always sit down in front of the king. Now, tell me your story." "Thank you very much, sir," said Miles, and sat down. "Well, I lived in a big house called Hendon Hall," Miles began. "It's near London. I lived there with my father, my brother Hugh, and my cousin Lady Edith." "Tell me about your brother," said Edward. "Hugh is not a good man," said Miles sadly. "He didn't like me. He is very angry and nasty." "Is your cousin Edith nasty too?" asked Edward. "No, she is very kind and very beautiful. I love her very much. I wanted to marry her," said Miles. "Why didn't you marry her?" said Edward. "I was a soldier," Miles went on. "So I had to fight in the war in France. I was away for 3 years. Then the enemy caught me. I was in prison for 7 years. "That's terrible," said Edward. He was now very interested in Miles's story. "I returned to England last week," continued Miles. "I want to go to Hendon Hall. I want to see my family again. I hope
I can marry Lady Edith.
Edward thought about his family, and he was sad. He missed his father.
Are you okay?
Miles asked.
No, I'm not. My father, the king, is dead. I want to go home.
Miles felt sad for this boy again.
Where is your home?
He asked Edward.
The palace is my home, of course,
shouted Edward. Then he told Miles his story about Tom Canty.
Oh dear, that's terrible,
said Miles kindly. But he thought Edward was mad. The friends were very tired, and they went to sleep. Edward slept on the bed. Miles slept on the floor. The floor was very hard, and Miles woke up early the next morning. He got up and went to the market. He wanted to buy Edward some new clothes. When he returned an hour later, Edward was not there. He was gone.
Subscribe now.